to be able to do what I'm doing right here, sitting on a bench in Florida, talking to you on my YouTube channel. That's what I'm going to talk about today is independence. It's the fourth step, the fourth pillar, and what I believe are the pillars, the 5 pillars of success. We've already talked about the foundation. The second item is mastery your craft. And the third is transformation. All the changes that you're going to be going through in your personal, in your career, in your business life. And the timeline on all this is really up to the individuals because everyone's going to go through something and they're going to have to make changes in their life. This is the fourth pillar. It's independence. Now, what does independence mean to you? You would think in business that it's financial independence. That's one of them. But there's mental, there's physical, there's emotional, and there's others. You could go on and on. But the reason why I brought up independence as a pillar, because you as an individual, you earn it. But you have to understand what it is. It took me years and years and years of what Uncle Frank told me one day, one of my mentors. He said to me, you know, Rock, the ultimate goal, I was probably in my 50s at the time, out of St. Paul. I was really going through tough times, such as divorce, business transactions, and I was a workaholic. I was, as I mentioned, single with 3 children, and I wanted to be not only a great businessman, I wanted to be a great dad because my father and mother brought me up with 10 brothers and sisters. I mean, we had great role models, and that's the discussion I have about foundation and so on. But independence, one day Uncle Frank and I were sitting there talking about the ultimate goal. And he says, Rock, the ultimate goal in life is to be independent and free. Independent and free. Now, are they different? I believe they are. Independence is basically the ultimate goal is to be independent, to call your own shot. And thank God I was born in the United States. And I've traveled more or less the world. This freedom is the opportunity to be free, to be able to make these choices without worrying about what others think and so on. Because I've always been more or less a dream, but I really didn't know overall what it all meant until I really became independent. And how did I become independent? It was basically seeing people pass on and how they felt about their passing on and their legacies and so on, because I'm a person that really gets to know people, and the people that I got to meet, we shared honesty, we shared trustworthy information. So when I think about independence and freedom, it's really special, you know, and it's at the point in life that, you know, one of the transformations, even when I became financially independent, it wasn't such a huge win because I always had, is it enough? Have I done enough in life? Have I given enough to my kids? Have I given enough to my friends and my employees? I always doubted myself for many years, even though I had all these achievements and accomplishments. As I get older, I got buddies in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I see that some people have regrets, and I didn't want to have any regrets. So I made some great decisions on my own, and with that, I always prayed to my higher power, which is, in my case, my God. I always wanted to know, and I was very thankful that I more or less knew my purpose at a very young age in my 20s, that I wanted to be a businessman. That's really what I wanted. Eventually, what I learned was it wasn't that easy. There's people and friends and relationships, including my marriage, that failed because I was obsessed with business. I was obsessed with work and my career. And the company came first, the employees came first. My marriage was not high on the priority because what I saw with my mother and my father were, they were a team. And my mother decided to be a mother, stay-home mother, and so on. In my case, it wasn't to be. Different generation. When I went through my divorce, I was only 33. I was an executive, but I wasn't a business owner. When my ex-wife asked me for a divorce, it was devastating because I thought I was doing all the right things. In fact, I was attending Harvard Business School. I received a scholarship, and it was like, wow, I'm on top. 150 employees, president, CEO. I was rocking and rolling. I thought that was giving back, being the best person I could be. I was independent. At the same time, actually, I wasn't independent. I didn't know what independent meant, or even free, because I had all these responsibilities and accountabilities to be accountable. But one thing I wanted and I valued was my integrity. I stayed the course, and that came from my parents. The strength of my parents of saying, always do the right thing. Conduct was more important than education and grades. That's the other thing that we were raised with. Why? Because my parents were first generation, and they were poor during the Depression. The only thing they knew was their traditions from the old country, Italy and Poland. When they got here, the grandparents didn't teach them and say, hey, education, education, education. It was always about work. It was always about work and food and family. Those were the values. Finance was even an issue because we were poor. So I was the next generation. I'm second generation U.S. I learned from my parents. Respect, appreciation, gratitude, God, faith, the 10 Commandments. That all comes from the foundation. What I was exposed to with kids and sports and being on teams and so on, I thought being one of 11 was normal. It wasn't normal. It wasn't normal. In fact, my dad was always working. He had 3 shifts, 350 employees at one time. We didn't see that when we were young. We just realized that, hey, Dad's at work. Mom was our gatekeeper. And I have a lot of that in my memoir of how things were split between my mother and my father when it came down to discipline and work ethic and respect and so on. My grandparents were involved. I'm out of St. Paul, Minnesota, which is basically blue collar. At that time, we were lower blue collar, which was actually good because that's how we learned our work ethic. My dad was a printer, a laborer, a production guy, but very sharp. So this whole independence came through what I had a mix of tragic experiences, education, friends. Nothing was given to us. We were not entitled people. We had to work on merit. I have 7 brothers and 3 sisters, and we all went different ways. I was raised in the 60s and the 70s, and I started my career in 1975. So I've been basically a workaholic and an achiever, an overachiever for 50 years, and I'm still not done. Here I am on YouTube. Do I feel independent? Yes, I do. Why do I feel independent? Because I let go of a lot of things. I let go of toxic relationships. I let go of a mindset of money money is the end of all, or the creator of all. No, it's not. And travel helped me a lot because it showed me the other cultures, how hard generational people have worked over the years. I just got back from Vietnam, which is a whole new experience because I think about the war. We call it in the United States the Vietnam War. Well, guess what? In Saigon, yes, Saigon, they still call it Saigon. In Ho Chi Minh City, they call it the American War. I believe that I've come a long way when it comes down to understanding and feeling independent and free. What I'm trying to say to you as a audience or as a young person, or I deal with all kinds, especially professionals that are out of work looking for a new career, a new change at this age. I've been changing all my life. I've been doubting myself. I never felt like I was a good husband, but I always felt like I was a good dad. And now I feel like I'm a good grandfather because I'm independent. I could do what I want. And I stay out of my kids' marriages. That's the other thing that I want to make sure of, because I might be a great matchmaker and a businessman, but I'm not a good matchmaker in relationships. Those are some of the things that I want to talk about: independence and the freedom and the peace. I'm at peace. When I really started realizing is when I bought my first company in 1990 after 15 years or so. And then my partner bought it from me 3 years later, which I felt was, oh my God, I couldn't believe that was happening. But I was at the point where I had to do it. He was bringing in his family. He had the money. He could grow the business without me. I said, okay. But it took many months, and I had already had the feeling of winning the World Series, the Stanley Cup, and the Super Bowl all in those first 15 years. That's how successful I felt. The other thing I noticed is the people that grew the business along with me all left to do their own thing. And I thought, wow, to be able to make that choice, to be independent, and they had the right spouse to say, yes, let's leave the company and move on and start our own business. Because we were all in our 30s and 20s at the time that we had the opportunity to work for my father at the time that bankrolled us. I started up another company and I burnt myself out again on that. Same situation. I had no partners this time because I learned from the first time, no partners if you could do it, which I did. So I completely invested in myself, not only financially, emotionally, physically, and I became worse than a workaholic from the first time. That's how tough it could be. I sold that company after 6, 7 years. And then after 25 years in my career, I started up a consultancy where I could be on my own, not working 8 to 4:30 per se with employees in a second shift and work weekends and watching the kids develop and go to school and play sports. Thank God I was independent and free being single. I didn't realize that my wife gave me the gift of being single again, so I could actually call my own shot. And that's what I did. I had the opportunity to call my own shot. There's not many people that can do that in their 40s and early 50s to make those decisions. So I've been very fortunate to be able to be independent and at peace, and also free to choose what I want to do. And I want to thank God in this case because I got the health to do it. I've been very fortunate with good genes. My mother passed away at 94 with no diseases. My father, soon to be 100, with his mind. I've been really fortunate when it comes down to health. And that takes work too. Understand that. One thing that I've asked people over the years, when I was in my 20s, I would say, because I was really impressed, or I idolized entrepreneurs that were successful. And I would always ask them, and these are what we call the greatest generation, guys that were in the Second World War and so on, including my dad. I would ask them, he says, what was the secret? What's a tip for me to be successful? He says, Rock, there's no tips. There's no secrets. I would say two things. Number one, I was lucky. And number two, I was never sick. Those are big, man. Those are big. In my case, I've never been in the hospital. I've never had any surgery. I've never had any diseases. And I'm 71 years old right now. And I'm still feeling like I'm in my 40s. And I want to pass that on to my kids and my grandkids. And that's the reason why I'm doing YouTube. These videos are really, I'm speaking to my grandkids. My kids already know what I had to go through. And guess what? I am so proud of my 3 kids. I got 2 boys and a daughter. And they've done it themselves. They created their own relationships. They've created their own careers. They've created their own education path. And now they're doing it for their grandkids. I am so proud of that. The other issue is I have 10 brothers and sisters, and we're all alive. And my brother is at 78, 79. I'm 71 in the middle, number 5, and my youngest brother will be 60 this year. So there's 19 years difference. My mother was pregnant 12 times. She had 1 miscarriage. Can you imagine that? And she lived to 94. That's the tough Polish shit she had in her. I asked my mother, this is true. I asked my mother, Ma, why'd you have so many children? She goes, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't plan it. God said that was the person that I need to be. That's my purpose. That was my purpose. To bear children. And then she taught us the 10 Commandments. She taught us about God. She taught us about the Blessed Mother. She taught us about the Rosary. Where was my mother when I was going through a divorce? Right by my side. There was no resentment, no bitterness. My mother had nothing like that with my ex-wife and my brother's ex-wives. In fact, she loved them all and to her death. Why? Because she loved unconditionally. The hardest part about being really independent is to learn how to let go of careers, of money, of bad, toxic relationships, and then not only the letting go, this is the hard part, when to forgive. Because that's all part of independence. That's why I could sit here in Florida at 88 degrees and sunny and then basically pump up this YouTube channel. I hope that I'm helping you understand this is all about you. And if you want to be independent and free, you can do it. But you got to have a plan. And you got to stick to it. That's why I always talk about staying the course. There's so many things to take under consideration. As a father, as an executive, as a laborer, as an independent person, whatever it takes. Believe me, it's worth it. So this is pillar number 4. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be talking about pillar 5, which is now the wisdom that I'm trying to convey. That's the reason why I do these YouTubes for my grandkids. So when Papa Rock is gone, they might understand what Uncle Frank was saying. And what I finally understood is independence and freedom. That's what America's all about. We have that opportunity to do that. We have that choice. I want to thank God for everything He's done for me at my youth to understand my purpose, to work at it, to teach me the choices that I made. That's why you're going to hear more and more about picking the right horse. I've been good at certain successes, but I've also picked the wrong horse in certain situations. But you know what? God's helped me through that. You got to have courage. You have to have resilience, perseverance. That's why you need a plan. My plan was to be independent and free from Uncle Frank 20, 30 years ago. Nobody understands it unless you hear it and understand why, from a wise man, why that meant so much to me. So I'm passing it on to you. So step 4, pillar 4 is independence. But I'm going to add freedom to that to really make sure you understand the peace that I have now. I could die tomorrow and feel okay because I feel like I've achieved what I needed to achieve. And as you know, I'm an achievement-driven dude, you know? The other thing that Uncle Frank shared with me later on in life was when I was dealing with my parents as they were getting older and going into independent living and so on. And we were accustomed to bringing a crisis to my parents and let my parents make the decision, even though we were in our 30s and our 40s. He says, listen, only bring joy to people. Don't bring headaches to people. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. Always bring joy. So I'll talk to you soon. God bless you. Talk to you.